and welcome to Hawaii Environmental Change Agents Top Environmental Bills event. We are so grateful to all you folks for spending your evening with us. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that we all know how important it is to take action for the environment and why getting effective legislation passed is so crucial to our shared future and future generations. And if you don't know that, then please stay after at the end. We'll have a talk. Actually, we'll have some time at the end if folks want to learn how to get connected to task forces or any other questions you may have. So yeah, the state 2023 legislative session started with a bang, and Hawaii Environmental Change Agents, or HECA, has identified 270 some bills or so that are potentially of interest to environmental groups. And the task forces that are here today narrowed that down and are going to present their top bills, the cream of the crop, the most important bills that need all of our support to be enacted into law, as well as, of course, our legislators are here, our champion legislators, Representative Nicole Lowen and Senator Mike Gabbard. So thank you very much. They're going to be presenting as well here right at the beginning to tell us what bills we need to take a look at. I highly recommend you have a way to take notes, because there's going to be a lot of good information, a lot of bill numbers being talked about. A lot of these are going to need actions from all of us, like supportive testimony, either right now or really soon. If you're familiar with the legislative session, it happens really fast. So first, I would like to introduce the infamous Ted Bolin, climate protector and founding member of HECA, who will get us started by talking a bit about HECA and introducing our environmental champion legislators. So,
thank you, Matt, for introducing me as infamous. That means it's all uphill from there. Let me get a little background here. The Hawaii Environmental Change Agents, HECA, is an umbrella group that has arranged group meetings with legislators and has organized autonomous task forces to promote action on various environmental issues. HECA has been active the last 2 or 3 sessions. We're getting more and more active and more organized each year, which is really encouraging to me. We now have 10 active task forces that you'll hear from today. So I think we are better organized on environmental issues than ever before. For those who want their voices to be heard on particular issues, please follow and participate in the task forces in that area. You'll hear from them tonight. There'll be ways for you to sign up with them if you want to participate in the task force. And if you want to get their emails indicating legislation that you might want to testify on, it's really a good way for you to get involved as a citizen. As Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of committed citizens working on an issue can make a huge difference. Indeed, that's the only thing that it ever has. I've butchered the quote a little bit, but you can find it under her. And I believe in that. I read recently that sociological analysis that said if you have even 3% of the committed people involved in an issue, that can really swing the tide. That's all you have to get going. So I thought it was even a higher number than that, but we've got the core group here and we should move forward with it. So thank you for your participation tonight and for your participation throughout the session. Next, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Senator Mike Gabbard, who has been our champion in the Senate Agriculture and Environment Committee. He's in his 7th year as chair of the committee. He was chair of Energy and Environment Committee from 2009 to 2015, chair of Water, Land, and Agriculture in 16, and has been in his role as AEN since 2017. So he's got a lot of experience with environmental legislation and has really been great about pushing things. He's also served as a member of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, the Climate Mitigation and Adaptation Commission, the Greenhouse Gas Sequestration Task Force, and the Fuel Tank Advisory Committee. So he's been, in addition to his committee chairs, he's been very active. He's championed numerous bills while chair of the Senate Committee on Environment in the past 14 years, including landmark legislation in 2015, calling for Hawaii to be 100% renewable by 2045, and Act 100, which established the first community-based renewable program in the state. And we're looking for him to push our biomass bill to make the renewables clean renewables this year. In 2018, he led the passing of the first in the world, Act 104, to ban the sale of sunscreen containing the chemicals oxybenzone and octinoxate. And with the passing of SCR 44 in 2021, led Hawaii to become the first state legislature to declare a climate emergency. Let me also introduce, we'll go back to Senator Gabbard in a second, but I want to introduce, get the introductions out of the way. Our other champion here is Representative Nicole Lowen. She represents District 7 in Kailua Kona, North Kona, and South Kohala on Hawaii Island in the Hawaii State House of Representatives. Representative Lowen is now serving in her 5th year as the chair of the House Committee on Energy and Environmental Protection, and is also a member of the Agriculture and Food Systems and Consumer Protection and Commerce Committees. Rep. Lowen has passed legislation to strengthen state policy on climate, decarbonization, energy efficiency, clean transportation, natural resource protection, and wastewater and solid waste management. Representative Lowen is a founder of the Environmental Legislative Caucus, a coalition of legislators that works in collaboration with NGOs, government agencies, and other stakeholders on environmental issues. She's a member of the Hawaii State Climate Commission, the Invasive Species Council, and the Sea Grant Advisory Council. In addition to her work within the Hawaii State Legislature, Representative Lowen is currently serving in her 3rd year as an appointee to the Department of Energy's Electricity Advisory Committee, which advises the DOE on a variety of electricity issues, strategies, and programs. Representative Lowen has been a resident of Kailua Kona for more than 25 years and has been serving as a state representative since 2012. I want to state a personal note that I have been working with both of these people for the last, God knows how many years, and they have been just great leaders on the environment. So please extend a warm HECA welcome to these two environmental champions who are giving us some of their time at a time when I know they are both incredibly busy chairing hearings. So thank you both. Let me turn it back over to Senator Gabbard.
Thank you, Ted. Hello, Mai Kako, and mahalo nui for inviting me here this evening to share my environmental legislative priorities for 2023. Unfortunately, I have a 6 p.m. meeting that I have to attend, but I'll definitely watch the recording of your presentations. Plus, if you have any questions, just drop me a line at the Capitol. I did get a sneak peek, and I must say I'm very impressed with the way you guys have organized yourselves and the various task forces that you've developed and the bills that you're tracking. So mahalo to HECA and the Youth Climate Future Forum and everyone else who helped to organize this event and for all you're doing to protect this beautiful paradise that we get to call home. So what you're doing is a perfect example of Laulima, right? Many hands working together. They've given me 5 minutes to talk about my environment-related legislative priorities for 2023 session, which began January 18th and ends May 4th. I'll go through quickly some of my top bills, noting that this session, there are 1,618 total bills that have been introduced in the Senate alone, and that's 232 more than last year. I personally introduced 78 bills based on the input that I received since last session from numerous environmental groups, including many of you. So we'll start off with the visitor impact fee, also known as the visitor green fees. Many of you have seen this on the news lately, and I won't go into the details, but you'll hear that during the Hawaii Green Task Force presentations, so I won't review all of them here. The one that I introduced, SB 658, is part of the Environmental Legislative Caucus package, which Ted mentioned I co-chair with Rep. Lowen, and which was put together with input from the Nature Conservancy, among other groups. Visitors who come to our island paradise, they pay a fee to help maintain and protect our natural resources, including our reefs, beaches, oceans, forests, streams, shorelines, etc. And, you know, to me, the visitor impact fee is truly a no-brainer. I think we can agree that all of us should pay our fair share to protect our state's beauty and bounty. So stay tuned on this one. I got a good feeling for this session. We know that the governor is already on board, so I'm hopeful something meaningful will pass this session. Next is the carbon cashback bills. That's SB 1004 and SB 1060. And what these bills do, they establish a carbon cashback program, which puts a carbon tax on fossil fuels and returns an equal amount generated by the carbon tax, subtracting the admin cost to Hawaii residents in a refundable tax credit or a cash payment. So more than 40 countries have already adopted a carbon tax program. Over 3,500 economists, including 28 Nobel laureates, have signed a statement endorsing carbon pricing, which says, and I quote, "Carbon tax offers the most cost-effective lever to reduce carbon emissions at the scale and speed that is necessary," unquote. And locally, as Paul can back up from UHERO, the research is showing that this carbon tax and dividend policy would reduce the consumption of fossil fuels while financially benefiting most Hawaii households, and low-income households would experience the greatest financial benefit. Next, Green Amendment, SB 635. I heard the Green Amendment today at my AEN committee at 1 o'clock, and we passed it out, so it's going to move to the next committees, and that's Judiciary and WAM, the Ways and Means Committee. And most of you here probably know that this advocates for a provision to be added to our state constitution, to the Bill of Rights section, that recognizes and protects the rights of all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, or income, including future generations, very important, to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. And so while support's gaining momentum in over 15 states across the country, so far only 3 states have passed a Green Amendment bill. That's Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York. And so I'm hopeful that Hawaii will be number 4. And remember that we need a 2/3 majority in each chamber, in the House and in the Senate, to pass a constitutional amendment. And if that happens, it'll be on the next ballot in 2024. And the people of Hawaii will be the ones to make this decision, not the legislature or the governor. Next, Healthy Soils, SB 660. When managed sustainably using organic and regenerative farming practices, soils can play a huge role in climate change mitigation. This bill, SB 660, would create a statewide soil health assessment with a list of best practices for improving soil health. It would provide farmers with education and technical assistance to implement farm management practices that contribute to healthy soils. Last session, it passed the House and the Senate, but unfortunately it was vetoed by the governor. So I've got my fingers crossed this year that with the new administration, we'll see this bill cross the finish line and help lead us closer to reaching our state renewable energy goals. In closing, mahalo for listening. As I said earlier, Laulima, let's have many hands working together this year to have a successful, environment-friendly legislative session. Your voice really matters. So please send in your testimony, or better yet, come in person or testify online. Aloha and mahalo. And on that note, I will pass the mic over to co-chair of the Environmental Legislative Caucus, as well as my counterpart in the House, Rep. Nicole Lowen. Aloha.
Should I just dive in?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Okay, I didn't prep a PowerPoint for this, but I'm thinking I can share the PowerPoint, let's see if that's working. Wait, is that working?
Yes.
Okay, it's hard for me to tell because I have multiple screens over here, but I'll go with it. So this is actually the PowerPoint I prepared for Climate Week. So I think it covers the bases. Okay. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, here we go. Skip that. Okay, I'm ready. So I'll skip over the ones we've already heard Senator Gabbard talk about, because we share some of the same priorities. I would say the bills I'm introducing this session fall into, well, not all of them fall into these 4 kind of categories, but they're sort of energy related bills, and then secondly, also electric vehicle related bills. And then there are cesspool bills, and then there are waste management bills. So that's kind of broadly the 4 categories in my mind, but this slideshow has slightly different categories. So I'll just highlight the ones I think are of most interest to the group. There's the hydrofluorocarbon management program. This is creating a management program under Department of Health to kind of monitor and stop leakage of hydrofluorocarbons, which are kind of scheduled to be phased out per rules proposed under the Environmental Protection Agency. And so this is mirroring a program that was implemented in California, and it would just help to reduce their very high global warming potential, like refrigerant chemicals, essentially, that have better replacements now. So as those are still being used, this would create a program to monitor, prevent leakage, and kind of facilitate that phase out. Talked about carbon tax. I know that's really important to this group. Okay, I was moving on to talk about the energy efficiency bills. So one bill I think is, I would love to get support on, is a bill that would prohibit the sale of mercury containing bulbs. So this is, sorry, I am struggling with my technical issues right now.
Nicole, it's working now. It's the slides on clean transportation.
Oh, really? Oh my goodness. Okay.
Sort of working.
I can't figure out how to stop screen sharing either, because that's what I thought I did. Are we back on energy efficiency now?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay, I may not be able to stop sharing my screen, so somebody might have to cut me off. Okay, mercury lamps. So this is lamps like fluorescent bulbs that contain mercury, which is a hazardous waste, and it winds up often in the landfill or being incinerated and creates more problems. LED bulbs that we now have on the market don't contain hazardous chemicals and are much, much more efficient and have a much lower life cycle cost. So it just makes sense for people to stop using the fluorescent bulbs, but old habits die hard. And so we feel like kind of just moving to take them off the shelves is an easier way to get people to change behavior than just telling them. And there's really no reason that we should be importing, hazardous waste into the state when we have really viable alternatives to not do that. The appliance standards bill adds to a bill that we first passed in 2019, or a law that we passed in 2019, to create state level appliance standards. So this adds additional appliances to that, and it's based on reporting, or it's based on work done by a national organization that works on energy efficiency issues to evaluate what's the upfront cost of the more efficient appliance, what's the payback period, what are the energy savings, and they kind of prioritize the list of which appliances to tackle first based on lowest upfront cost, biggest savings. And I think all but one of the things we have listed here actually have no additional upfront cost. And this actually also includes toilets, which was because water use and energy use are linked, right? And water use requires a lot of energy to pump. And it was actually also a request of Board of Water Supply when I had met with them to say, what can we do about better water conservation, especially with everything going on with Red Hill on Oahu, et cetera. And they said it'd be great if everyone had efficient toilets. So we're adding to that. Let's see, clean transportation. I think the most viable bills here are the charging. We have a couple rebate-based bills that I support. Those we have to still get through the money committee, so I don't know what will happen there. But the EV charging bills, one is to direct state facilities to do workplace charging, make sure that's included in new construction, and then gives them some funding to start converting some parking in state facilities to allow for workplace charging. That way people can charge during the day when rates are going to be cheaper, and it's better for the whole energy system. And then we have another bill that just adds incentives for affordable housing. So I've kind of learned over the years that any mandates on including stuff in affordable housing get shut down really fast in the Hawaii State Legislature. So we're just going with purely incentive-based proposals for that. We have green fees on this natural resource protection bill. Department of Environment, I sadly think might already be dead. We do need one, but it doesn't look like that's going to move. And then there's, the governor's proposal for natural resource for his climate impact fund, his 100 million. And then there's also a House Majority Caucus package bill to give additional funding to natural resource protection. So to provide additional funding to DLNR, specifically like DOFA, DAR, Water Commission, and Office of Conservation and Coastal Land. So the divisions of DLNR tasked with natural resource protection. And then this water efficiency bill on this list is actually a bill that would give money to the county if they provide matching funds for them to create a pilot program to give incentives for people in drier areas of the island to convert their landscaping to lower water use landscaping. And we also threw in programs that would, incorporate some of the provisions could incorporate asking for like use of native plants and plants that could host pollinators. So that's included in there as well. The vulnerability index, this was an environmental caucus package bill as well. It was a bill that was drafted by Leah Laramie, who works at who's the staffer for the Hawaii Climate Commission. And this would, fund the assessment and create an online database to look at the social vulnerability to climate change and help inform policymaking around those equity kind of issues. Deep sea mining, this bill we had a hearing on just on Tuesday, and this would prohibit deep sea mining in Hawaii state waters. And then the PFAS chemicals expands on the bill we passed last year to expand that to disallow, I forget the year we put in there, but by a later year, like importation of any food packaging, food serviceware, cosmetics, and personal care products that contain PFAS. And then, of course, we have another new versions of our extended producer responsibility bills. I think I've talked about that to this group before, but that's again another pollution reduction, waste management, packaging waste bill. We have several different bills dealing with single-use plastics and reducing them. And then last but not least, there are a lot of bills relating to cesspools. That hearing is coming up first thing tomorrow morning. And we're hopeful we'll get some traction this year because that concludes the work of the cesspool conversion working group, which is actually a working group I was part of as well. So I will stop there. Thank you guys all so much for organizing this, for inviting us, and to the Youth Climate Commission people that are here. Okay, you disabled screen sharing. Thank you. That helps. And I am done. Thanks. And then I think both Senator Gabbard and I have limited time, so I don't know if you want to do Q&A at all, or if you want to skip that, but I'm available.
Yeah, we were planning on doing Q&A at the end, but I guess if we can be flexible here. I do want to apologize first about the presentations mix up there, but was really impressed with how quickly you're able to put together an awesome presentation. So thank you for that. Yeah, I suppose we could, if folks have some questions they want to put in the chat really quick. How long do you have, Representative?
I have maybe 10 more minutes, then I've got to get back to I have to meet with, we have a joint hearing tomorrow, so I have to meet with the other chair.
Sure, I'm sure we wouldn't want the audience to miss out on a chance to be able to ask you some questions. So if folks want to put any questions you have in the chat, and we will pass them along to you, Representative. I guess, wow.
Someone did direct message me. It would be helpful if I put bill numbers, and I think because I just pulled up an old presentation I had done prior to us knowing the bill numbers. I don't, after 10 years, I don't remember bill numbers. They're all mixed up in my head, so I have to have it written down. But okay. Yeah, so apologies for that, but they'll be coming out on, the bills that are moving will come out on the hearing notices. So it's helpful to follow sign up for email notification of the committees that kind of deal with environmental issues.
I see Steve Parsons is asking a question about how we can help essentially get some of these bills passed. Like I think he's referring to carbon cashback, but in general, is the best way to help out testifying in person on Zoom, written, writing your legislators? What's the best way folks here can get involved and help out?
Yeah, I mean, I think submitting testimony is important, and contacting actually your representative or senator that represents you. I think we always sort of feel somewhat more compelled by the actual point of view of our own constituents. So, I mean, we're getting lots, I think the testimony comes through, it's kind of seen, but I think, it's contacting your representative or senator specifically, that's especially helpful. There's a couple questions about PFAS. The question about AFFF, we passed a bill last year that reduced it, like it banned it from anything with training exercises. And then we worked with the firefighters because they want this too. I mean, it affects their members. I guess there's certain kinds of fires that they still don't have good alternatives for, so they continue to have that in those. But regardless, like the state law doesn't regulate the military. So we're going to work on a resolution this year to like urge the military to kind of to do the best they can to phase out PFAS too. But yeah, the state law still doesn't regulate what the military does.
Thank you. I see a question from Ted. Ted, did you want to go ahead and ask that? I'm not sure what the question was.
Yes, I can ask the question. As a former Deputy Attorney General who represented the Environmental Council in the Office of Environmental Quality Control, I take umbrage when all these bills come through that are dismissing various things from review under the Environmental Review Statute. The latest example is a bill that's getting heard, I think, soon with the Housing Committee that would exempt affordable housing from 343 review. And while, of course, we all want affordable housing, to blanket eliminate it from any EIS review, and also to change the rules that we spent 3 years devising on the definition of program, I find personally disappointing, and I wonder if that's really necessary. So that's my question. Thank you, Rep. Lowen.
This hearing is coming up on Friday, and definitely submit testimony. There was a similar bill last year that we just kind of got shut down. I think some of what they're asking for just codifies the rule changes. Some of it is additive. I've been talking to people on the Environmental Council who worked on those rules packages, prior, also some people who were previously on the council. And, I think like we'll have to see how the hearing goes, but, last year we kind of shut the bill down, but the conversation hasn't died. So I almost think there's it's necessary for the proponents of doing this to see the feedback directly. So I think it's important that we go give it a hearing. Yeah.
Thank you.
But we will be making amendments to the bill. So.
Okay.
Why is the EPA, sorry, I'm seeing questions in the rules. I have about 2 more minutes. Why is EPA no go this year? Because we didn't get very good, because I think there never was a Senate companion. I think that just fell through the cracks. We sent one over, but it didn't go in. And then the referrals in the House are just messy. So it's challenging. Yeah. So it didn't feel like it was possible. It's possible to get it scheduled. Or even if we pushed it out of, one committee or one joint hearing, that it would make it much further. So we'll just have to keep pushing for it.
There's a bill that I worked on that would ban gas appliances or installations in new construction. It's gotten a lot of national press because of activity. Evidence that 13% of asthma cases are caused by
Yeah, no, I'm familiar.
Yeah, I wonder if that.
Yeah, in principle, I agree. In principle, it is become this kind of culture war topic right now. So I have a feeling, I don't know. We, like Senator Gabbard said, he introduced 78 bills. We don't get to introduce quite that many in the House. I probably introduced somewhere just south of 40, but the reality is I'm not passing 40 bills this year, and Senator Gabbard's not passing 78. That's not what happens. So sometimes we just pick our battles.
And that bill fell through the cracks in the Senate. So if you could possibly hear it in the House, that would be great.
I hadn't been planning on it.
I didn't think so. That's why I'm talking.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. There's a lot of there's other bills I'm trying to pass that I think are more substantively impactful. And if it's, going to come down to where am I going to focus my efforts and energy? We have to pick and choose.
Do you have time for one more question or?
One last question.
All
Yeah.
right, so I see Melody Oduha is asking EPA certified lab, can we get one? Is that a possibility?
I think that is, I think we funded something last year. I don't think, yeah, I mean, I think that that measure went through the health committee, so it wasn't something I was directly working on. But I think as a kind of as part of the Red Hill committee, because we have a separate, it's not a committee that hears bills, but just kind of a working group or, you know, Red Hill committee where we can have like info briefings and stuff. And that was one of our recommendations, was to get a in-state laboratory capable of doing results to that same kind of granularity and turning around the results more quickly. I think it's important. We should have it. I think we put funding towards that, so I'm not sure. It probably takes time to implement, but I can't speak with absolute certainty on where it is.
Well, thank you so much. The one other thing in the chat is we got a load of appreciation to you for all your hard work. So again, we really appreciate all you're doing and thank you. We know you're so busy. We'll let you go about
Thank
your work.
you.
Aloha.
I'll see you all soon, I'm sure.
All right, continuing on. So the next part of our presentation, thank you again, Ted. And again, to our legislators, there's so many of the bills in that list of 270 that were introduced by Representative Lowen and Senator Gabbard. And we're eternally grateful to them for their hard work for preserving our environment. So now as we move into the task force presentation part of the meeting, again, we only have a short amount of time for each task force to share just a few minutes with what they're working on. This will move fast, so continue taking lots of good notes. But if you do want to find out more about what each task force is working on and how you can help out, we'll try to provide contact info at the end. And you can hang on to the end of the meeting. We can answer any questions, get you in contact with the right folks in that task force that you're interested in. So I'm going to share my screen again. There we go. Our first task force, how convenient, is carbon cashback. And carbon cashback task force has been working to implement carbon fee and dividend type legislation at the state level. So I'd like to invite Paul. Paul, could you come talk to us about what I dare say this amazing task force is doing?
So you'll never guess who the leader of this task force is. But anyways, thanks, Matt. I'll be very brief. I think Senator Rhodes did an excellent job selling this bill or this set of bills, carbon cashback, and why it's important. I would just ask that here that if folks have time to please submit testimony for HB 1146. Which has a hearing scheduled on Tuesday at 8:45 a.m. So please get your testimony in by Monday, 8:45 a.m. The other thing is exactly what Rep. Lowen said. If anybody happens to live in the district of Senator DeCoit or Senator Gabbard, if you can please message me in the chat, we'd love to try and get this bill heard on the Senate side. So that's SB 1004 and SB 1060. It's been referred, but we're still waiting for a hearing. So next, Matt.
Thanks, Paul. All right. Yes, I guess I am involved a little bit with the carbon cashback task force. So amazing that it ended up first. And then our next task force is the fantastic Green Fee Task Force, which is working to enact a visitor green fee to build visitor stewardship, conserve our cultural and natural resources. Doré, did you make it? I didn't see if she made it today.
Hi.
Oh, good. Great.
Awesome. Thank you for getting this up. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. I am the community organizer for the Hawaii Green Fee Coalition. We're a team of a lot of different orgs, have been working on this for 5 years, not myself personally, but the green fee effort has been going on for 5+ years now. And it's very rare that I feel like it's the year for something to pass, but given the governor's support by leadership on both sides of the legislature, feeling really optimistic. I'm gonna share a Civil Beat article that came out that kind of explains where we're at. We do have a hearing tomorrow at 10 a.m. So you can submit late testimony or on our website, hawaiigreenfee.org. We will give regular updates on all of the hearings. We are going to be prioritizing the bills kind of laid out here, which are $50 visitor green fees, with that money going to a special fund in DLNR managed by an oversight commission that has a diverse group of stakeholders that make sure that the money goes to where it's intended to go, which is to the environment. And that 25 to 50% of the funds are going to community organizations and nonprofits outside of state agencies. So ensuring that that money gets distributed back to the great community organizations helping our environment, many of whom are here today. Next slide. So kind of just summarizing what I shared, managed by a state agency like DLNR, the grant mechanism and the cross-sector representation that we've designed into the Oversight Commission to really overcome this risk of the money being taken for general funds. So really trying to prevent and mitigate that. So I know we don't have much time, so I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Doré.
Thank
Yes,
you.
and if folks do, I believe there's a hearing tomorrow, as she mentioned. Even if you haven't submitted testimony, you can actually show up at the Capitol and just show up for the hearing, and they will usually ask if anyone is there that wants to give testimony, and you can just give your testimony without even registering. I've done that before. So moving on to our third task force is the Oceans Task Force. And the Oceans Task Force works on legislation involving protecting our reefs, eliminating all these things that pollute our oceans. And here to tell us what legislation can help us do that, Kiyo Hide.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, my name is Kiyo, and I'm so excited to share our slate of bills that we are in support for the ocean hui. We're just really energetic, and we've been really active. We've been meeting weekly, and so cut some time. Our list of bills that we support consists from bills on cesspools, bills on the aquarium pet trade, bills on water monitoring, and also fish ponds, and as well as issues relating to nearshore reefs. So cannot emphasize enough, as what Doré said. There's going to be a lot of hearings, so please be on the lookout. And yeah, this is our list of priority bills for the ocean hui. Thanks.
Mahalo, Kiyo. All right. Next up, we have our Clean Power Task Force, which is working to transition our utility sector. Oh, sorry, someone's trying to call me. Who's working to transition our utility sector away from fossil fuels. And here to tell us the top bills is Bill.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Yeah, everybody, we live in a world of electricity, and it's getting more and more so, including the electrification of transportation. And our wise wisdom legislators 20 years ago came up with a thing called Renewable Portfolio Standard, which set the bar for what utilities would be doing by 2045 in terms of moving to renewable energy. The problem with that, why this law rather needs to be reformed at this particular time, is that there are a number of loopholes in terms of what defines renewable energy, particularly biomass. Biomass is basically right now H-Power, burning trash in Oahu is a good example of that. And Huhuanua's movement forward to basically defoliate and deforest a good part of Hawaii Island to burn trees for electricity is another example. But it's a broad scope of combustibles that are not fossil fuels that are acceptable to replace fossil fuels. And in the long run, it's a really bad thing. And at one point in time, 20 years ago, we looked at that and said, this makes sense because we want an all-in energy strategy to get off fossil fuels and do it as quickly as possible. But the devil's in the details. And in this particular case, we are now today at a point where clean energy, and this is zero emission energy options such as solar and wind and battery storage, have come into such predominance in effectiveness and cost effectiveness that they really are the cheapest and the most clean energy option that we have as a state. Now, they are included in the RPS, but they would be bumped aside for biomass and other burn for energy solutions that are in the market. So our mission here with Senate Bill 424, and thank you, Senator Gabbard, if you're out there, and Senate Bill 425 and the companion bill HB 445 really have one mission, and that is to basically clean up the RPS guidelines that enable utilities, our two state utilities, to make choices about what power plants are and what they do to create electricity. And so by getting rid of biomass, we're eliminating one of the most toxic options available to the utilities today. By example, biomass incinerators generate 65% more CO2 than coal plants. And if our main goal here is addressing greenhouse gas emissions, it seems to me like, why do we have that in the law today? These bills rather, would clean that up. And we believe the time has come because we have clean power options available to us. There's more on this on the HECA site for Clean Power Task Force, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. And I just got a message in the chat that the youth need to present soon. So I'm going to go ahead and do a decarbonization of transportation with Tam Hunt, and then I'm going to bump up the youth presentation to right after that. So next up, Tam Hunt with the decarbonization of transportation, which has been working on legislation to accelerate the transition to electric vehicles.
Great, thank you, Matt. Tam Hunt, green energy attorney, board member of the Hawaii EV Association, and Transportation Decarbonization Task Force chair for HECA. So I'll be snappy here. Can you advance the slide there, Matt? I'm still seeing the Clean Power Task Force. There we go. So very quickly, our top priority this year for our recommendations was indeed an EV purchase rebate for low and moderate income households. And this is on the table, already passed out of the committee, yesterday. So very happy about that. This would provide up to, in our recommendations, and this is actually not in the bill yet, but if they accept the recommendations, it would be about $2,500 per car, or 6% of MSRP, whichever is lower. And then qualifying vehicles would be $80,000 or less for vans, pickups, and SUVs, and $55,000 for cars. Next is EV purchase subsidies for private fleets, HB 199 or SB 368 in the Senate. And this is also a big priority. And this is actually not as aggressive as we'd like, because it basically directs the State Energy Office and the Department of Transportation to create a program to incentivize EV purchases by private fleets. So it's in the right direction, but probably not quite aggressive enough in our view. Next, HB 346 looks to get state buildings more EV charge ready and also more energy efficient. And this includes just 2 buildings and a pilot to go through the process of becoming EV charge ready. We recommend at least 10 for this pilot. And then last but not least, this is also a really big priority for us. HB 937/SB 973 would require that rental fleets incorporate zero emission vehicles or plug-in hybrid vehicles by a set amount by a set date. And currently the bill says 30% by 2027, 60% by 2030, and 100% by 2035. And it defines a PHEV, again, a plug-in hybrid EV, as a truck, SUV, or a van, which is, I think, without being spelled out in the bill, this is a way to acknowledge that there aren't always affordable EVs, meaning zero emission vehicles for trucks, SUVs, or vans. But we're getting in the right direction by having this bill in its current form. I'm sure it will change quite a bit. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Tim. As I mentioned earlier, the youth who have been so patiently waiting are ready to present to us. So we're going to bump them up here a little bit. Sorry about that change in the agenda here, but I'll pass it over to Paul to talk a little bit about the Youth Climate Future Forum first.
So I think a lot of the reasons why all of us are doing this work is for the next generation and the generations after us. And so I think it's very important that we hear what the younger generation has for their climate priorities. And these came out of the Climate Future Forum that was held on December 3rd. And I'll let them talk about it since I'm sure they can do a better job than I. So turn it over to Liza, Audrey, and Chisato. Thank you.
Aloha, everybody. Thank you so much to Paul for the introduction. My name is Audrey, and along with Chisato and Lisa, we are representing the Citizens Climate Lobby Youth Action Team, composed of many other like-minded, passionate youth. We are all currently sophomores at Iolani School and are so grateful for HICA for giving us this opportunity to speak.
So we want to also mention a little bit more about the Climate Future Forum. On December 3rd, our CCL Youth Action Team, in collaboration with many other environmental organizations, held the Climate Future Forum. CCN ended with over 80 youth coming out with policy priorities to protect our future, many of which align with HICA's legislative goals. And we are really thankful for the support of the representatives Lowen and Gabbard of our event, because it really mattered a lot for us and for every single person that was able to participate in the event. Yeah, so today we would like to present our team's legislative priorities, which you can see on the screen before you, stemming from the working groups at our aforementioned Climate Future Forum. So firstly, our forum addressed Hawaii's food systems. So our goals align similarly with HICA's carbon sequestration task force in our mission to increase local food production through scaling farmer capacity and infrastructure. And also we seek support for composting programs and food forests. And in addition, as high schoolers ourselves, we recognize the need for farm to school networks and the creation of agricultural electives, which some of which may be funded by current bills such as HB 248 and HB 249.
Right. So the Climate Future Forum also had a working group on climate and the economy, which addressed the many economic drivers and solutions to climate change. The result was an immense amount of youth supporting the implementation of an increased rail tax on fossil fuels through an equitable revenue recycling system, protecting low and middle income households in Hawaii. A system also known as carbon cashback, as the Carbon Cashback Task Force explained before. And the policy priorities from this working group very much align with HICA's Cashback Task Force, and we very much support SB 1004 and SB 1006.
Also during the forum, our participants paid attention to the climate justice systems, as it is also really important for the community in general, and the ways to improve inclusivity and the ability of community participation in the legislature processes. And our ideas are similar to the HICA's mission statement to raise the voice and effectiveness of the environmental community by increasing the level of education in schools, raising the awareness and ensuring people's equality. And moreover, our climate justice priorities are resonating with HICA's new task force called Social Equity. And the task force is very new, so it hasn't been listed on the website yet, but Josh Cooper will be able to tell us more about this later, I believe.
Our forum also had a working group on sustainable infrastructure, where we discussed the many infrastructural avenues that will either exacerbate or mitigate our climate issues. Throughout the workshop, we focused on ways to reduce our severe dependency on cars and ways to improve the walkability and therefore livability of our communities. This includes electrifying our buses and increasing our development of fast charging EV stations. We also want to support public transit by improving the accessibility of public biking and bus routes, especially in accordance with the rail, and by creating a centralized payment system for all our public transit. We also want to ensure that any growth in Hawaii will be sustainable growth by mandating photovoltaic technologies for our residential developments, funding wastewater treatment and cesspool removal, and prioritizing mixed-use zoning and multifamily housing over single-family zoning in our state. Many of these policy priorities sympathize with the goals of HICA task forces, including the Decarbonization of Transportation Task Force, the Decarbonization of Buildings Task Force, and Clean Power Task Force, and the Solid Waste Task Force. And some of the legislative priorities we have are supporting SB 965 and HB 837.
So thank you guys so much for giving us the time to speak. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you coming here and giving us all some hope and for your priorities. Speaking of decarbonization of buildings, I'll pass it back to Paul now. He was going to present for our Decarbonization of Buildings Task Force. So Paul, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Climate Future Forum. Very nice job, ladies.
You're mute.
Oh God, it was so brilliant what I had to say. But anyways, I hope I can repeat it. Thanks very much, Matt. Great job, ladies, on the Climate Future Forum. As Rep. Lowen mentioned, the bottom bill here, House Bill 197 on refrigerants passed out, and we're hoping to push that along as it goes through the other committees. Going in reverse order, I'm gathering from Ted's question that gas appliances, you folks can probably ignore that one. But on a more positive note, going to the top, the assessment of energy and water. So this is a program to basically follow up on HB 1801 that passed last year, calling for energy efficiency improvements in state buildings. So if that's going to happen, need to be some system to actually account for what the emissions are, what the water use is, what have you. And this bill would help in that respect by setting up a system in which these data can be recorded and then progress can be monitored. The other area that we're looking at and waiting to be heard is construction and waste recycling. And so as we know that construction, demolition waste, what have you, makes up a large share of our landfill. And so we'd like to address this issue and move to a more sustainable environment. And hence this bill would help us move us in that direction. But for this one, we're still waiting for it to be referred. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Paul. I'm sorry, I think I might have accidentally muted you there. Right, so the next up we have carbon sequestration. This task force is working to support developing healthy soils, decreasing food waste, increasing food production, and taking a critical look at land and water use. Here to tell us what bills to care for the land, Kara.
Actually, I'm going to pass that to Susan first. She's with me in this group. Susan, are you there?
I'm here, but can you forward to our task force? Thank you. So I'm Susan Ng, and we are part of the Carbon Sequestration Task Force. We, as you can read, we advocate for positive climate change, etc. I'm going to speak very little on these bills that we have listed because I think we want to spend more time on HB 14. So we are advocating for the carbon sequestration pilot program, which actually just needs to be funded. We're hoping it'll get funded this year with Governor Green. Then healthy soils. Senator Gabbard talked about that. This climate HB 952 appropriates funds. So we're trying to get that funded. And then the local food system, we need to establish a sustainable food system working group that will address for the whole state food systems that will be sustainable and oh, sorry, just works for the whole year, for the whole state. And this also appropriates funds to start that. There's a working group of specific people who will be on it, which I think is wonderful. Anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Kara now to talk about HB 14.
Okay, thanks, Susan. So the reason why I want to talk about HB 14 is because there's actually three bills that have been introduced about this Act 90 issue. So Act 90, there was a working group that was created discussing what to do with a lot of these lands that are being used for agriculture. So a lot of them are pasture lands, but also have other environmental, I guess, like their ecosystem resources, right? So they're able to help with reforestation, or we can be doing like agroforestry or other types of land management to sort of improve those lands. So these multi-use lands are being proposed in two other bills, which aren't listed here, SB 77 and HB 698. They're both proposing to move these multi-use lands to the Department of Agriculture instead of from DLNR, where they can manage all these multi-use cases. So this is an issue for us in terms of trying to protect those lands from being removed and then only being used for agriculture. So we don't want those lands to be strictly used for agriculture, and it's going to be hard or impossible to bring them back for uses like reforestation. So SB 77 is actually going to be up for a hearing on Friday. So if people are interested, we would love it if you could take a look at that bill and think about opposing it. Because again, it takes those multi-use lands to the Department of Agriculture and limiting the flexibility of DLNR to manage those lands for everyone's benefit. Some of the other things to mention is that, Act 90, because it was a contentious issue with the pasture managers, HB 14 is a great compromise between the ranch land interests and also the DLNR, conservation management and restoration considerations. So they are looking at changing that the way that they manage those leases so that they can, instead of doing the typical auction through DLNR, they would be going through renegotiation directly with those ranch managers. In addition, they were going to change the way that they do the leases so they could extend them if desirable. So again, the current HB 14 that we are supporting keeps sort of the evaluation and assessment with DLNR and allows them, or the Board of Land and Natural Resources, to make those decisions that represent a lot of those public interests for the land use. So again, SB 77 and HB 69 are the ones that we are not in support of, because those take away the ability for DOA or for DLNR to manage those lands, because it takes the land to DOA. That might be really confusing. If anyone's interested, you can send me an email or check out our task force. I can put information about that in the chat, but I'll try to wrap that up and we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Next up, we have our Social Equity Task Force, supporting bills that address climate justice and social equity. Here to tell us what bills are the most critical this year, Joshua Cooper, are you there?
I am. Aloha, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Wonderful.
Oh, I think you're muted again.
There. Okay. Hopefully it looks like I was muted there. Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. That was my fault again.
No problem. I was looked and I was like, it says the host muted me, but I know you wouldn't do that, Matt. And it was great to meet you in person at the Climate Future Forum. It was also great to hear the presentation from the representatives. I'm going to be very brief, so hopefully the slide can pop up real quick. But what we're looking at is a couple of items. We're focusing climate justice and social equity. And the first one is SB 657 and HB 441, funding a database of social vulnerability to climate change. And the other one is HB 949, programming funds for a loan program to provide low-income households with low-interest loans to purchase solar energy systems. We also have SB 376, HB 186. And that's looking at seabed mining issue that's very huge for the Pacific. And because of an action taken by Nauru at the head of a multinational corporation, it's really trying to set up a whole new gold rush. And Hawaii is right in the middle of that, as well as our neighbors in Oceania. One last thing I'll mention briefly is we also have a resolution at the Honolulu City Council. It's the Fossil Fuel Free Non-Proliferation Treaty, and that'll be heard on February 8th. So just bringing all that up, I'm at a University of New South Wales diplomacy training program, and I've just been asked to do a special talk on Indigenous in a time period that wasn't asked earlier. So I'll stop there, but thank you so much for including me.
Thank you so much. And sorry again for muting you. I think I figured out what I'm doing wrong here.
No problem.
I know it's 6:30 already, folks, 6:31. We have 2 more task forces that should go pretty quick. So if you can hang in there, and again, we'll have time for Q&A afterwards if folks want to hang around for that. So next up is our Green Constitutional Amendment. Oh, it's formerly known as the Green Constitutional Amendment Task Force. Is now Hawaii Environmental Game Changers. Here to tell us how we need to change our game on the environment is Dave.
Aloha. So, yeah, we're focusing on game-changing legislation that can make a major impact across the spectrum of environmental and climate issues. We're at a place in time when plugging holes in the dike is no longer enough. We need legislation with greater overall impact in preventing cracks in our environmental protections. We identified 2 such bills. The first is the Green Constitutional Amendment, SB 635 and HB 444. It gives us the right that we do not have now to clean air, land, water, and a healthy environment for our children in their future. The Green Amendment reads, the inherent and inalienable right of the people, including future generations, to clean water and air, a healthful environment, climate, healthy native ecosystems, beaches, and shall be protected and shall not be infringed. I read that a little badly, but that's basically what it says. Sorry about that. Placement of the Green Amendment into Article 1 of our Constitution, as with other fundamental rights in our Bill of Rights, will ensure that government prioritizes environmental protection and works to avoid environmental pollution and degradation as part of the decision-making process. When this is the best opportunity for preventing harm, including crafting and implementing legislation and regulations, when issuing permits, when approving development, and when considering how to address ongoing environmental concerns. Currently, government agencies act to manage pollution after the fact, whereas a Green Constitution Amendment, government agencies will be motivated to proactive in preventing pollution before it happens. So in essence, we have a right currently to free speech, we have a right to bear arms, but we have no right to clean air, land, or water. Our future generations are being denied the right to inherit a healthy environment. So we have to ask, what use is a right to free speech, to carry a gun, if our air, land, and water are too toxic to sustain us and for future generations? We have no right, if we have no right to clean air, land, and water, if future generations have no right to inherit a healthy environment, then we essentially have no rights at all. So when we pass the Constitutional Green Amendment, we will automatically provide protection for our environment from plastic pollution, chemical pollution, environmental degradation, etc. So I encourage everyone to get on there and support your rights. Another game-changing bill is HB 195 and SB 781. This provides online permitting app that dramatically shortens the approval of solar projects, which will immediately increase the number of solar panels on Hawaii rooftops. So we're working, piecemeal now to get a lot of different kinds of legislation passed. If we pass these 2 pieces of legislation, they will dramatically have a major effect on all other environmental legislation. And so we encourage everyone to look for those kinds of legislation and to support those types of legislation. This is just 2 we've mentioned. There are others that we don't have time to talk about right now. We have a hearing coming up tomorrow morning. Is that right, Sherry? HB 444. And anyone who wants to be part of this and help us get the Green Amendment passed, or the app bill for the solar panels and etc., then please just leave your contact information in the chat. Thank you so much. And you guys are the best. Aloha.
Thank you, Dave. Hopefully I'll try to make it to that hearing tomorrow morning. All right, last but definitely not least, the Solid Waste Task Force was originally known as the Extended Producer Responsibility Task Force, is working to reduce packaging waste by encouraging reuse and refilling. And here to tell us what bills we can use and reuse this session, Jennifer Navarra.
Hi, thank you. So, yeah, we did start out, we're still primarily focused on a bill that will reduce packaging waste problems, but I did highlight other bills that hit on other big portions of our waste stream. Construction and demolition makes up the largest portion of our waste stream. Someone else touched on this, and I know we're all like probably a little out of it now, so I won't go into too much detail there. There's also a really good bill, SB 1262 for organic waste diversion. That one actually sets targets that would eventually ban organic waste from being landfilled by 2035. So I think that's a really good bill, and it lays things out nicely with a lot of detail. So to talk about the packaging waste bill, we really changed gears this this session, and it's, you know, our producer responsibility 2.0. It takes a step backwards and really gives the responsibility of DOH along with an advisory council to develop an implementation for a producer funded program to reduce packaging waste with a focus on reusing and refilling packaging. And so there will be an advisory council that's created. In the first phase, there'll be a needs assessment that's done by DOH at the county level for each county. And then that information will be compiled along with answering lots of different questions on like, how do we exactly go about, you know, which products do we target for packaging, which producers do we include in the program? Like, these are all big questions we realized we didn't have the answers to. And so this allows a process to essentially do a study or an implementation plan, but actually allows for a program to be implemented by July of 2026 after a public process. And so we'll see what happens. We'll see what kind of opposition and support we get for this, and maybe we'll make it all the way. There's also one bill to oppose. It's a companion bill. It's actually a weakening of the electronics recycling bill that was updated last session. So keep an eye out. I'll be sending out information on that. But it just weakens that bill. It reduces the fines if they don't meet the targets. And so we definitely don't want that to happen. So I'll leave it at that. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our task forces listening into this meeting. So impressed with how many of you are working so hard to address our environmental issues in so many different ways. And we saw, for example, how many different topics Representative Lowen is working on. As Senator Gabbard said, this is La Lima, many hands working together. Folks that are out there and might be a little overwhelmed by how many bills we have here, just maybe start with a few that you're most passionate about, latch onto those. I know all these bills here need to get passed, or the few that need to be opposed, but you know, do what you can, find your passion, and we need to really push all these bills as far as we can. So special thanks to everybody who's worked so hard on this meeting, John and Ted, for putting together that list of 270 some bills. That's truly a monumental work. Really appreciate that. And Virginia for working behind the scenes to put this together. And we'll move now into Q&A. If folks have questions or want to chat or want to learn how to connect to a task force.